Hello, and welcome to the second episode of The Whiteboard, making football fans smarter every day. So, today we will be talking about defensive fronts and what defensive technique numbers mean in the game of football. So first, we have the zero technique. And if you ever hear of the zero technique, it's a person generally referred to as a nose tackle that lines up directly across from the center. Likewise, all your even number techniques will line up on a dude. So your 2 technique lines up on the guard. The 4 technique lines up on the tackle. The 8 technique, or the 6 technique, lines up on the first tight end. And the 8 technique will line up on the second tight end. Now, if this second eligible receiver is split wider, still doesn't matter. You insert ghosts in there and you can count out still, okay, he's playing 8 technique. Sometimes the numbers like, okay, is that an 8 or a 9, which we'll get to the odd numbers here in a second, can get a bit fuzzy, but that is generally how it is counted. So we talked about the even numbers lining up there. Next, we will move to the odd numbers. Now, the odd numbers, even numbers line up on the lineman or tight end. Odd numbers will line up in the gaps. So a 1 technique lines up on the outside shoulder of the center. That would mean a 3 technique lines up on the outside shoulder of the guard, 5 technique on the outside shoulder of the tackle, 7 technique on the outside shoulder of the first tight end, and 9 technique lining up on the outside shoulder of the second tight end. Sometimes you'll hear a wide 9. Well, we don't go to 10 and above. So if we split even wider than this, because if I bring a dude over here, alright, 9 technique would be about there. Now, if you line up way out here, they'll call it wide 9. So that is what wide 9 is. So, you can refer to fronts by a series of numbers. And we will see that here, alright, if I have a 1 tech, a 3 tech, a 5 tech, and on the other side we'll say we have a 5 tech. If I tell you that, as long as you know this numbering convention, you know it will either look like this, or it could look like this, right? We don't know which side the 1 and the 3 are on. But hey, I'll say, hey, from left to right, it goes 5, 1, 3, 5. Well, it could be like this or this. We know from, if you think about it logically, we don't want to, in general, leave a gap by overloading, because the run game can come through this alleyway between this 1 and 5 tech. We'll probably have the 1 tech over here. Now, that gets us into some more specific front types. So generally, we will have 5 or 4 down linemen and 2 linebackers, because most offenses live in the nickel. So, if we zoom out, the left side here is the strong side, and the right side is the weak side. Now, you might question, how do you know that? Well, the strong side is simply whichever side the tight end lines up on. So, if we decide to line up the tight end over here, we'll just switch these 2, and now the right side becomes the strong side. But in this example, I've decided that the tight end lines up to the left. Additionally, doesn't matter. Here I showed shotgun. If they lined up under center, still the left side strong. Now it can get a bit interesting if you say, alright, what if there is no tight end? Alright, some teams say, okay, then we'll say passing strength. We'll go to the left side here is the strong. that varies from team to team. But most of the time there will be a tight end, whether he's on the ball or he's off and the other dude and like a receiver's on. That is the strong side. Can get into some nuance with even formations. So, now, if we have this formation, we want to make sure we have all our gaps covered. So, if we have a 5, 3, 1, and 5 tech, we will want to make sure we place our linebackers to cover these gaps, because there is a gap. If I grab a, say, purplish, we have this gap to worry about, we have this gap to worry about, and we have this gap. Because there's a dude in between every other, in between every other lineman, there is a dude. In theory, they should be able to. Alright, a run comes outside the left guard. I'm going to assume my 3 technique can handle that. Run comes to the right of center here. I'm assuming my 1 tech can handle that. So I'm going to place one of these linebackers. I'll rename the 4 tech to linebacker. A linebacker. And delete you. Delete you. Clone you. And I'll think, okay, I'll put my other linebacker split fairly wide to try and help. Alright, if he decides, he'll try and get both this A gap right here as well as the C gap. He'll try and get both. Now, the question becomes, how are we going to name these defensive fronts that we are seeing here? Now this, we will generally hear called as an overfront. And what does an overfront mean, you ask? Great question. An overfront means, generally speaking, there's going to be this 3 tech dude that lines up over the guard. If he lines up on the strong side, we'll call it a overfront. If he decides to line up on the weak side, that's fine. We'll put the 1 tech over here. Now, this linebacker probably is going to shift more to straight up, and this linebacker can even cheat out farther to try and get, okay, the gaps we have to worry about if we're thinking linebacker are there, that A gap, this B gap, and this C gap. Now, if we decide to bring a safety in, it becomes really easy, and this is where you see single high structures. Alright, we can have a safety come in, he'll take that gap, everyone just needs 1 gap. That is the advantage of going single high. Now, there is one more front that most people will need to know. And what if there is a 3 technique on both sides, and we'll say a 0, okay? A classic 3-4 front. Alright, we'll say there's 2 tight ends to balance it out. So, have a 0 technique, we have a 3 technique on either side, and I'll say a 5 technique. Now, I'm going to say that this 0 technique has to take both sides of the center. So my 2 linebackers can be dedicated more specifically to this gap here, and then making sure this fullback doesn't destroy our run game. So, the question that should arise out of this is, fix the hash mark, is, alright, what do we call this? There's a 3 technique on the left, 3 technique on the right, 3 technique on the weak. Is this an over and an under front? Well, when both or all 3 of these interior linemen have a guy across from them. So the left guard has the 3 tech, center has a 0, right guard has the 3 tech. We call that a bare front. If on a passing down we remove this, we call it a wide front. So, in the future, if you hear me say, well, if it's an over front, I'll give you a minute here to think about what that would mean. And you can pause the video if you want to. Alright, gave you that minute to think of the over front. Means that we'll probably have a 1 tech. We know this 3 tech has to be here. And I'm going to assume 5 techs. Maybe we have 2 linebackers back here. That brings a bit of questions. But we know, hey, has to have a 3 tech, in this case over the left guard. If they motion the tight end over here, what does an over front look like? Once again, 3 tech needs to go to the strong side. 1 technique can come to the back side. What if we call an under front? What would that look like? Well, an under front, we know this 3 technique has to go to the weak side. So this 1 technique can go to the strong side. And that is your under front. Now, probably these linebackers are shifting out to help cover more of this right side, but this general front 4 would be an under front. And finally, what does a bare front look like? Once again, we need to have all 3 interior linemen covered. Now these could be two techs and a 0 tech. We could have a 3, and a 1. So it doesn't matter these exact numbers, but it just means that there's a guy on every lineman. Even these could be like 7s or 9s out here. But bare front, 3 dudes in the middle. Over front, we'll have 1 3 technique to the strong side, and an under technique will have your 3 tech to the weak side. Thanks for watching. That's all I have today. If you liked this video, please leave a like. And if you really liked it, subscribe. Thank you for your time, and I hope you learned something. Bye-bye.